Georgie, don't you ever get tired of just reading about things?
Hey everyone, I want to make a different sort of video because it's getting towards the end of the year and inevitably lots of book lists start coming out, and I love all these lists of the top books of the year and people ranking all the best things that they've read all year. But I've noticed that quite often you start to see the same books appearing on multiple lists and it all gets a bit samey, and I think it's a bit sad when so much is published over the course of the year that other kinds of books don't get really the recognition that they deserve. So I want to talk about a few different books that I think were really special and should be highlighted and celebrated, but which have just sort of gone under the radar where they haven't been nominated for any prizes that I know of, and I haven't seen them appear on any of these lists, and I haven't seen many people talk about them on their booktube channels or on book blogs, and so I just sort of, these are books that I've read that I think are really interesting and really worth reading. So to give you a kind of different sort of list of the year, but instead of just talking about these books, I thought I would combine it with activity I'm doing at the end of this week because it's currently Thursday, and on Saturday evening I'm having a big Christmas party. Every year we have a big sing-along Christmas party where a friend comes and plays the piano and we all sing Christmas carols and pop songs and show tunes, and I bake lots of stuff. It's the one time of the year when I end up baking loads and loads of stuff, and so I'll make another sort of baking with Eric video and bring that back because early on in this year I made when I made a video making my recipe for bacon and onion rolls, Latvian bacon and onion rolls, when I was talking about a Latvian novel, Soviet Milk, when I read it. So yeah, so I thought it'd be fun to have a little baking session, and while I'm like kneading dough or icing things or, you know, doing different activities, then I can be talking about these books, which I think have gone a bit under the radar. So I wanted to start baking this morning, but I can't yet because inevitably, like, I went and got a lot of ingredients. So I have my pile of ingredients here of like flour and eggs and sugar, lots of sugar. Of course there's lots of sugar because it's Christmas. Inevitably, I always forget to get something, and I forgot to get cases, so I was going to make some cupcakes this morning, or maybe some Rice Krispie treats, but I forgot to get any cases for them, so during the day, before, I think at lunchtime at work, I'll need to go out and buy some cases, and then this evening I can start baking. But yeah, I've got my list here of, I always print out a baking list of, because I'm very regimental in going through the order of things I want to make, and because I make a lot of stuff. And also have my Nigella book, because I inevitably make some Nigella recipes and some new recipes that I find in different like cooking magazines, because I love this secret thing about me. I love to get like cooking magazines and just flip through and find new recipes of things to make. So yeah, I'll start baking this evening and we'll chat to you then. So it's Friday morning. I wanted to film last night. I got back in and had everything ready for baking, but it was so dark, because it gets so dark so early at this time of year, that there was just shadows everywhere, and I couldn't film in a way that like showed me baking and also had me in any kind of light. So, you know, because I'm not Nigella Lawson, I don't have I think Nigella Lawson has a whole separate house to when she films her cooking programs in, so to be able to illuminate all of the food and herself, of course, while she's baking. So, but obviously I don't have the budget for that. So I thought I would wait till this morning and film in the daylight. But I did do some baking last night, and actually I did some baking last weekend, which I didn't talk about. I made these pfeffernuss biscuits. I made 120 of them. Austrian spice biscuit. That's it's a spicy biscuit base, and then it's iced. And a lot of my friends really love these, so I always make a huge batch of them, and I make them a week in advance because they're quite hard when you first make them, and so they over a week they'll kind of soften a bit and they'll be much nicer. They have marzipan and black pepper in them, and it's so good. And so last night I made these are the cupcake things that I needed to get. I needed to get silver foil thins for these white chocolate Rice Krispie treats I make, because they are covered in silver Smarties, and so to get the shine, I'm so silly, aren't I? But yeah, I wanted to have a silver foil cupcake case to go with the white chocolate crispy treat, and I've made these for so long. I've from this Delia Smith Christmas special magazine that I got in 2003, and I've been making them ever since then. And it's a very simple recipe in there. Basically, all you do is get 50 grams of blanched hazelnuts, 50 grams of blanched almonds, 60 grams of Rice Krispies, I think, and 200 grams of white chocolate. And you toast the almonds and the hazelnuts for several minutes in the oven, and then you melt the white chocolate down. You mix the, you bash up the nuts and you mix them with the Rice Krispies, and then you mix all of that with the melted white chocolate and put them into cases and cover them in silver Smarties. And it's such a really delicious little treat. And but yeah, I love this magazine. I've kept it for so long, and I make another recipe out of it as well. So yeah, those are a couple of recipe things that I've done. I don't think I should like go through the whole recipe or show you all the stages of the baking process, because it takes a lot of work, and it's quite tricky to film. And when I'm baking, I just like to relax, and I get my Doris Day Christmas album on, my Ella Fitzgerald Christmas album on, my Kate Bush Christmas album on, my Tori Amos Christmas album on, you know, all the greats. And also I listen to the Sugar Babes, because I just love the Sugar Babes. I could listen to all of their albums. I don't think they did a Christmas album, but yeah, I just like baking to be a real nice, relaxing time just at home by myself. And so yeah, to try to film all the stages of the process, it'd be a bit tricky. So I'll show you the finished product when I do it and talk about the recipes a bit, in case you're interested in making them yourselves. But anyway, I should talk about books, because this is a booktube channel. So get talking about books, Eric. And yeah, some of the books which I think have gone sort of under the radar this year. And the first one I want to talk about is actually the first novel that I read this year, which is called Sisters by Lily Tuck. And this is quite a short novel, but really powerful. And I don't think Lily Tuck is very well known in the UK at all. I'd never really heard of her before, although I think she's quite renowned in America and has won a number of awards there. But this is such a clever, short little novel about a woman who becomes somewhat obsessed with her ex-partner's new partner. And it's all about that odd sort of bond that we kind of have with all of our ex-partners, new partners, because if you think about it, we have such an intimate understanding of our exes, even though they're not in our lives anymore, unless we happen to still stay friends with them, if we're mature enough to stay friends with our exes. And so, yeah, it's an odd sort of fascination that you can have with your ex's new partners, where you know that you share all this personal information about them and have shared their body before, and so it's incredibly intimate. And so she talks about how this is almost kind of a sistership that she feels with her ex's new partner. But also it's obviously a competitiveness, and there's a jealousy there. And even if she feels she doesn't want to be with her partner anymore, you know, in that kind of selfish way, we can still wish that they were just on our own. Like if they can't be with us, we don't want them to be with anyone. And obviously that's not a very mature attitude, but it's honestly how we feel sometimes. And I think she captures that so well, and it's really cleverly plotted. So it's quite gripping, and it works up to like quite a climax. And so yeah, I just adored this novel, and I don't think I saw anybody else talking about it or didn't see it get any award recognition. So I just wanted to highlight that as another good book. And so now I'm gonna get on. I'm gonna blend some vegetables to make a savory canapé, and I'll chat to you about that in a minute. So next we have what I call vegetable pate, although really it's just blended roasted vegetables. And I like making this every year because I have some friends that are vegan and vegetarian, and it's always difficult to know what savory things I can make them at a party. But blended vegetables is a good bet, and it's really simple to make, and it's really good. So delicious. Sorry, I'm in a silly mood today. I don't know why I'm saying this, but yeah, I dollop it on some crostini, and yeah, it makes a really good snack to pass around at the party. And I use sweet potatoes and red pepper and courgette or zucchini, you could call it, and aubergine or eggplant, and a few tomatoes and some spring onions. I just roast them all together with some oil and salt and pepper, blend them all up, put some lemon juice in, blend it all together, and there, done. Really easy, good canapé. Okay, so the next book I want to talk about is called The Earlie King and the Kid in Yellow by Denton. This is his first novel, and I just like, it feels sort of funny talking about this novel because I'm all here like, oh, it's all wonderful Christmas stuff, and this is a dark dystopian novel, and there's a lot of crime and death and violence, and so like go from Christmas to yeah, bloody dystopian future. And this takes place in a sort of dystopian Ireland where it's just raining all the time. And one of the great things about this novel, it's just so atmospheric. You can just feel, everything feels like it's saturated and wet and horrible. And even on the page, they print these water stains on the page, so it all feels like everything is just soaked. And so the story concerns this kid in yellow who's really a teenager, and it's sort of and there's a drug lord named the Earlie King who basically runs the city and is very powerful because it's a sort of lawless landscape in this dystopian future. And the kid in yellow works for the Earlie King as selling drugs at first, but then he falls in love with the daughter of the Earlie King, and they have a child together. And this doesn't go down well with the drug lord, and so it's about the dramatic story afterwards where the Earlie King tries to take the child, and the kid in yellow tries to take the child back, who's his own child, and save him. And it's about his sort of quest for searching for what's right and morality, but also just a really dramatic, really lively tale that's yeah, like I said, so atmospheric and wonderful. And yeah, I wish more people were reading it and talking about it because I think he's a really exciting new author. So next, I'm gonna get on, what's next on my list? I have to, I'm gonna fill some buns. I'm gonna fill my buns with bacon. It doesn't sound right, does it? But yeah, I'll get on with that next, and then I'll talk with you about another book. Right, so I've got all my buns laid out here, ready for filling. These are going to be my Latvian bacon and onion rolls again, which I already talked about and already made a whole video about, so I don't need to show you how to make them or talk about them, but it's quite time consuming going through each roll because I have to put bacon. I've grilled some bacon and crumbled it up, and have some onions, fried onions, that I'm going to fill them with. And that's quite a time-consuming thing because I have to go through each roll, fill them with a bit of each, and then roll it back up again. So while I'm doing that, I thought I would talk to you about another great book that I wish more people would read, and that's the Parentations by Mayfield, which is, I know Simon has talked about this on his channel as well, and really gushed about it quite rightfully, because it is such a fun, inventive, but also dark and gothic story. So it's sort of half historical novel and half fantastical type novel, because it's about some people who find a life-sustaining elixir in the crags of this volcanic cavern in Iceland, and the consequences of that, of a group of people who keep this life-sustaining elixir, and then other people who discover it, notably a family and two old women who discover it, and then their various tussles with each other in London in this sort of so it all has this sort of Victorian Gothic type feel to it, which is so pleasurable to read, while also like raising these larger questions about mortality and the meaning of life and the meaning of family and these sort of improvised families that come together, and has some really detailed, fascinating characters in it. She's so good at writing these characters, real unique sort of characters that I haven't really come across before. And so yeah, I just enjoyed this novel so much, and I think it would make a really great winter read because it just takes you in this whole sort of fabulous historical landscape while telling this really gripping tale. So that's another suggestion. And I'm gonna keep going through and filling all my buns and then bake them, and I'll show you the finished product. Right, here's the finished product, all of my bacon and onion rolls, or pigs. And I made 64 of them, but there's only 63 in this bowl because, of course, I had to try one. And I have to be honest, I'm gonna go a bit Paul Hollywood here, but I'm not totally happy with the bake of them. I think there was something wrong with the rising agent, so they're not as fluffy and bread-like as I would like them to be, but and that they normally are. But I mean, they still taste nice, but especially warm. So, but you know, that happens in baking sometimes. Things don't go to plan. So for my next thing, I'm going to be icing some cupcakes, Christmas cupcakes, which are more of like a fruit cake. And I know in America, fruitcake is sort of a joke. And in Britain, though, it's like much more prevalent and lots of people eat it all the time. You know, a really strong fruit cake with lots of fruit and nuts in it. And I've sort of come around to it. I still prefer just a regular sponge, but I do appreciate it and enjoy it now. And my partner especially loves these, so he always like makes me make them every year because he really likes them. So I've made 14 cupcakes of fruitcakes, and I've covered the top with apricot jam and given them a little cap of marzipan because just to taste good. And now I'm going to ice them. I have some royal icing sugar here. And so while I'm icing them, I thought I would talk about the next book that I want to discuss, which is White Houses by Amy Bloom. And I feel like not many people have talked about or discussed this book too, but it's the story of Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's told from the point of view of Lorena Hickok, who was almost certainly Eleanor Roosevelt's long-term lesbian lover. And there's no actual physical proof that, you know, what they did in the bedroom, but they were very, very close and wrote very romantic letters to each other. And so yeah, it quite reasonably talks about their intimate relationship, and so delves into what would be all of the natural problems that would occur of having a lesbian lover who is the First Lady of the United States. And what I especially enjoyed about this novel, I mean, it gives a really interesting view on history and FDR and the whole presidency then, and the political issues that were going on at the time, and also political issues to do with sexuality. But it's such a beautifully romantic novel. The way she portrays their romance with each other is so lovely and realistic. Like, I especially love the scenes where she does show them being physically intimate with each other, and how they acknowledge that neither of them have, you know, sort of ideal bodies, and you know, I mean, none of us are happy with the way we look, and are, you know, a lot of us have issues. We sort of pick at different parts of our body, and what's so lovely about how she portrays that is that in their love for each other, you know, they see those what would otherwise be termed flaws as really beautiful individual characteristics of the other person. And she just describes that so beautifully, and I just, you know, my heart was just beating away like reading it, and it was so lovely. So yeah, I think that's a really incredible novel, and I wish more people were reading it and talking about it. So with these cupcakes now, I've bought these little sugar decorations that I'm going to put on top of them, because I don't have the patience to make my own sugar decorations. So I'm going to put a tree on the top like that. But then for some other ones, I thought I got these little bows, and I don't know if this is naff or not. Tell me if you think this looks naff or not, to just have a few bows around the outside, sort of like that. I don't know, is that silly? But yeah, so I'm going to finish icing these, and then I will come back to you with another dish I've made and talk about another book. So the light has suddenly gone. Like I said, the days are like so short in when it gets to winter, so the sun is suddenly gone, so it's quite dark. So this will be the last video that I make today, and hopefully I'll be able to film a bit more before the party as I'm making some other stuff. But I just wanted to show you. So these are the finished cupcakes that I made. And a really funny thing is that the recipe I got for them is out of this book called Let's Make Whoopie, which I don't know what a cupcake recipe is doing in a book about whoopie pies, but there you go. So at the moment I am going to make some sour cherry amaretti. This is a recipe from Yotam Adelengi, where it's ground almonds and egg whites and honey and sugar and sour cherries and lemon zest, and you mix it all together, and it's really, really good. So I'm making biscuits out of that, and while I'm doing that, I thought I would talk about Sharlene Teo's novel called Ponty, which is another book that I think really deserved more attention, and especially like cited out because when it was reviewed in The Guardian, it was reviewed quite negatively, and I thought really the reviewer was being quite condescending, talking about creative writing workshops and how she felt that this was a novel that came out of a creative writing workshop. But Ponty is a really interesting novel about three different women over three different time periods, and it goes back and forth between their different narratives, showing their stories and their relationships to each other. So there's a mother who was a sort of wannabe film star, but she ended up only in these sort of cheap horror movies. And there's her daughter who's very self-conscious and awkward, and the daughter's friend who is a bit of a biatch, and but has some interesting sides to her as well, and yeah, and I just love how over the course of the novel it develops their relationships with each other through showing the different narratives in these different time periods, and over time I've found this novel has sort of grown on me, and I've been thinking about the emotional complexity of it more. So yeah, it's one that really has lingered with me, and one that I'd really recommend. So yeah, I'll stop filming for now because it's very dark. You can probably hardly see me. But yeah, I'm gonna carry on baking into the night and listening to more Christmas music, and I have lots more stuff to make tomorrow as well. But I'm probably gonna be quite rushed because we still don't have our Christmas tree up and stuff. So yeah, I'll be getting stuff together, but I'll try to do some filming and maybe show a bit from the party. So I'll speak to you again tomorrow. Well, it's Saturday, but the light isn't all that great today either because it's very gray and rainy today. But you know, what can you do? Anyway, we got the tree up, so that's a good positive thing. And I've just been making a recipe. I'm slicing some vegetables very, very thinly because I'm making this Nigella recipe for whipped feta toasts. And so these very sliced radishes and slices of radish and cucumber are going to go on top of this toast with a sort of feta cheese spread that has some cumin in it and lovely seasonal flavors. So that's really good. But yeah, the final book I want to talk about, because I've got a lot to do before the party starts, but I want to just talk about this last book because it's a book that I just finished this morning called Farewell My Orange by Iwaki, she's a Japanese writer who moved to Australia and has kept on living there. And the story is mainly about two women, one a Japanese woman who moves to Australia, but then also a Nigerian woman who moves to Australia as a refugee and with her two sons and her husband, but right at the beginning of the novel, her husband takes off and she's left looking after these two boys. And so both women go to an English language class and get to know each other over time, even though obviously there's these language barriers, but they can only speak to each other in English, which both of them can barely speak at the beginning. And so it's interesting how their friendship develops. And it's just such a beautiful short novel that I read this because a couple of you recommended on my that I should get to it on my sort of huge end of year TBR pile and yeah, it just sounded so good. I really wanted to get to it, and I found it very, very moving about friendship and about language and how we articulate what we want in our lives, and how these women find a different kind of independence in a foreign country, although they obviously encounter a lot of obstacles because of the language barrier, and then they each have real difficulties in their personal life. And yeah, and I just love the portrait of these two women. It's quite a unusual type of story about people I don't think we read about all that often. So I would highly recommend reading this novel. So I'm going to get on and make some other food and assemble things. I'll try to film a bit at the party, but we'll see how it goes. But do let me know, what are some books that you think that you've read this year and haven't heard many other people talk about or seen coverage of them in terms of them being nominated for any prizes or being put on any lists of or even being reviewed very widely in publications. And so yeah, I'd really be interested to know some other titles that have sort of sneaked under the radar that really should be celebrated and talked about. So tell me about those in the comments below. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've discussed and what you think of them. And if you want to know more of my thoughts about any of these books, I'll put links to my full reviews in the description below. But I hope you're having a wonderful festive season. If you celebrate Christmas, I wish you a very Merry Christmas. And yeah, I wish I could share all this party food with you that I've been making, because we always have lots of leftovers, but it's always great to have lots of stuff to snack on over the holidays. So thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.